Yeah, so we were discussing the attributes of the features of an intelligent agent, and last time when we discussed that an agent is primarily the one that interacts with its environment and perceives its environment through certain sensors, and then through actuators it actually affects the environment by performing certain actions. Uh, the decision of converting or your precepts, and here precepts are whatever are being understood from the environment. So you have sensors, and using those sensors, you try to perceive what your environment is at this particular point, or what is the state of your environment, or along with the state the agent is in. And you determine that, and then based on the precepts and based on what has been perceived, some actions are identified. And those actions are then basically applied in the environment, and agent performs those actions. So the conversion of precepts to actions is done through some reasoning module, and that reasoning module is sometimes a search method. At other times it's actually a model, or it could be a rule-based system, a conditional conditions in the form of rules. It could be say a deep learning model, or it could be a neural network model. So the way you convert or the way the agent converts the precepts into actions, that is something that defines the AI based techniques. And the focus of this course would be is to study those techniques. So this is how this complete scenario looks like. So once the actions are selected and those actions are applied, then the environment changes again. And because there are changes in the environment, therefore the sensor continuously perceives its environment through the sensors. Okay, so that perception is continuously carried out. Okay. Uh, Right. So the perception is continuously carried out, and this cycle of reasoning continues until there is no change in the environment. So the environment becomes, in a way, static. Therefore, the perception still continues, and the perceived thing is that there isn't any change in the environment. Therefore, as a result, no actions are actually predicted. Okay. The behavior of the environment is incorporated in the brain. So you see a box here with a question mark. So this is primarily where the conversion of precepts to actions takes place. So the behavior comes here. So the behavior could be, say, a reflex behavior. Reflex means that there is no modeling involved, or there is no, in a way, conversion or detailed conversion is involved. So you have a certain, say, perception about the environment, and then the actions are immediately taken. So if that is in the form of a lookup table, so you have a certain precept, and against that you have to perform a certain action without doing any detailed mathematical analysis, then the behavior becomes a sort of what you can say, a reflex behavior. Then there is model based behavior. Then there are other types of behaviors. We'll discuss that later in the slides. So, and then the actuators actually manifest that behavior. Okay. So that the manifestation of that behavior is actually done through the actuators. The initiation of that behavior is done through precepts. And then whatever the behavior is, that affects the environment. Okay, so this is how this diagram will actually look like. I hope, Ibrahim, I've answered your question. Okay, so let's just see. So we have already discussed about rational agents. So we are saying that this percept to action translation or conversion is done through a function, and that function or that is a simple program or computer program is primarily based upon an assumption, and that assumption is that this conversion would always result into correct actions. Okay, therefore, if it always converts into correct action, then that's actually a rational agent. The definition of the rational agent has been given in the slides, and these are the things that we were discussing last time. That whenever you take into consideration any particular agent, you look at the how to evaluate or what is the different things that are incorporated in order to evaluate the performance of the agent. What is the type of environment that you have, what are the type of sensors that you have, and what are the type of actuators that you are equipped with. So we were defining this performance based analysis is primarily of two types. You either have goal oriented performance, or you have utility function oriented performance evaluation. We'll discuss this later on. Then you have the environment, and the environment could be static or dynamic. The environment could be inaccessible and accessible. It could be deterministic or stochastic, discrete or continuous. And then you can also have episodic or sequential environment. Okay, again, with the help of a simple example, we'll try to see that what does it actually mean. Then you have the sensors, the sensors bit. And the sensors could be of different types. You can have a camera in place, you can have tactiles in place, you can have laser rangefinder, or you can have ultrasonic sensors or IR sensors. These are infrared cameras or infrared sensors are there. So these are the different types of sensors that your agent could be equipped of. Yeah, okay. G, Ahmed have actually asked, okay, what is the difference between stochastic and dynamic, and how would you explain that? Okay, I'll explain that in a minute. Wait. Then you have the actuators. So actuators could be in the form of, let's say, the agent could be fixed with wheels, or the agent could be fixed with some sort of robotic arm, or something of that sort, which performs some sort of an action. So let's say if it is a navigational robot, then the navigational agent, then in that case the agent has to move from one place to another place if the agent itself is moving. But in case of a complete software, the output in the actuators as such, as seen in a physical world, may not be equipped, but a display screen or a dashboard would be there that would depict, or that would show the results of the reasoning process that has actually been carried out. So if it is only let's say a sort of an agent that would help you navigate or give you a route from one place to another place, then in that case you have a dashboard, and that would primarily be showing, and you will have some sort of visualization there. But if the robot is actually moving, so in that case wheels might represent the actuation of the agent. Actually, अच्छा, स्टोकास्टिक और डिटर्मिन स्टोकास्टिक और डायनामिक का जो फ़र्क है वो मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. डायनामिक डिटर्मिनिस्टिक एंड स्टोकास्टिक. डिटर्मिनिस्टिक का मतलब ये है कि योर एनवायरनमेंट डजंट हैव एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ अनसर्टेनिटीज एसोसिएटेड विद दैट. सो से फॉर एग्जांपल the agent is in a particular in an environment where uncertain things may not happen. So misal ke taur pe, if the picture which I'm showing in this slide, agar aap left bottom corner mein dekhein, so this is of a robot which is called Rhino. So Rhino is a robot that was actually used in Britain to in one of the museums, who could actually take the audience, take the visitors from one exhibit to another exhibit, and then give a tour of the museum. So इस case के अंदर, let's say कि if it is a tour robot and it's actually physically moving, I'll show you a small video also जिसमें ये robot in action है. So you'll find कि डिटर्मिनिस्टिक इन्वायरमेंट है या अनसर्टन इन्वायरमेंट है. अनसर्टन, डिटर्मिनिस्टिक, अनसर्टन या स्टोकास्टिक का मतलब ये है कि अनएक्सपेक्टेडली समथिंग कुड हैपन. Say if it is let's say a moving robot and it's moving in a place where other agents are also moving. Say for example, if there are visitors to the museum and they're also present there, then a visitor might suddenly come in front of that robot, right? So as a result, some reflex action has to be taken by the agent. ठीक है. तो इस केस के अंदर किसी वक्त भी जो है वो कुछ हो सकता है. तो as a result the environment is not deterministic. ठीक है. So it's stochastic. So there is an element of uncertainty present in the environment. Static dynamic की और की बात भी है. And then this would also fall under the category of static and dynamic. सेम थिंग वुड हैपन. लेकिन डिटर्मिनिस्टिक और स्टोकास्टिक में एक एडिशनल फर्क ये है कि डिटर्मिनिस्टिक और स्टोकास्टिक के अंदर यू डोंट हैव एनी मींस टू एक्चुअली 100% डिटर्मिन दैट or you don't have any ability, mathematical form of mathematical ability incorporated into the robot or into the agent that could depict what has happened in the environment, unless you incorporate some sort of probabilistic models. Okay. So environment where a probability of happening certain things can be calculated, and you can't really be sure that what is coming up. तो उसको मॉडल करने के लिए आपको probabilistic approaches को यूज करना पड़ेगा rather than deterministic approaches. तो इसलिए deterministic और stochastic में आपके पास difference आएगा. So I'll discuss that little also. जी जी. सो हुज़ैमा ने जो बात की है दैट इज राइट. उन्होंने जो बात की है कि नॉन डिटर्मिनिस्टिक जो है दे वर्क ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ डिटर्मिनिस्टिक incorporates exact models or exact rules or exact reasoning processes, whereas stochastic would involve probabilistic reasoning processes. ठीक है. So जो reasoning आप कर रहे हैं precepts और उसके दरमियान. Okay, so before I move on, जी ईशा आपका question.
Yeah. Sir, I had a question about static and dynamic. Usually in this case, it is very easy to spot out that the environment is dynamic because the rhino itself is moving. Yeah. But in a game of chess, say, after every move, the environment does change, then why do we call it static? And there's a slight distinction given in the book, something about semi. I think it lies between static and dynamic. So if you could explain that as well.
Yeah, okay. It's actually not completely static. It's actually dynamic, but the type of dynamism that is available or that is present in a game environment, for example, chess आप ले लें या कोई और game ले लें, in that case it actually follows some fixed rules. Okay, so there are fixed rules of the game and you have to be within those games, right? So it's dynamic in a way, but then it's also limited. So you can't really do anything beyond what is being allowed. Okay, if that happens, then that move or that action would be disallowed. Okay, so that's why it would fall somewhere in between the two. It's dynamic, but it's not completely dynamic dynamic in the sense that nothing, or let me put it in that way. So it's dynamic, but not very stochastic in nature. So it's not probabilistic unless you look into the future. Okay, so because if you are futuristic, and we discussed earlier कि जो गेम्स हैं उसमें आपको फ्यूचरिस्टिक अप्रोच लेनी पड़ती है. यू हैव टू एंटिसिपेट कि व्हाट वुड बी द नेक्स्ट मूव, and that is in a way you can say that it's not deterministic in nature, so it's stochastic in nature. So in terms of its static and dynamic, because the environment itself, the board itself is fixed, and you know that whatever movement would take place on that particular board, और उसमें एक specific movements आपके पास हैं, and those movements are not beyond whatever has been explained. Okay, so therefore this would fall under that category जैसे आपने बात की. जी फैजान, आपका क्वेश्चन.
सर आपने बोला था कि अगर स्टोकेस्टिक हो तो फिर द एजेंट रिक्वायर्स टू पुल ऑफ सम रिफ्लेक्स एक्शंस. तो अगर उसके पास वो सारे नेसेसरी सेंसर्स ना हो तो फिर इनएक्सेसिबल की कैटेगरी में आ जाएगा, और अगर होंगे तो एक्सेसिबल की कैटेगरी में आ जाएगा.
जैसे इस केस के अंदर जैसे राइनो की हम एग्जांपल देते हैं, इन दैट केस लेट्स से इफ देयर इज एन एग्जिबिट इन द म्यूजियम और उस एग्जिबिट के अराउंड जो जो है वो ग्लास वॉल है, ठीक है. सो लेट्स से एन एजेंट इज मूविंग एंड द एजेंट कुड बम्प इनटू दैट ग्लास वॉल, ठीक है. सो ग्लास वॉल में बम्प वो इसलिए कर रहा है क्योंकि वो द एजेंट इज नॉट एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई करेक्टली कि क्या ग्लास वॉल एग्जिस्ट करती है या नहीं करती, ठीक है. सो मे इट मे नॉट हैव दैट requisite sort of sensory ability or perceptive ability to actually identify or yeah recognize the glass wall, ठीक है. So glass wall itself becomes inaccessible अगर वो उसको properly identify नहीं कर पाता, ठीक है. तो so you have to let's say hard code it in the system. So this is what you call inaccessibility. So inaccessibility could be lack of physics that is associated or lack of understanding of the environment. Number one thing. Second thing would be it could be lack of sensory gadgets that are required to completely access a particular environment. So इस तरीके से ये दोनों चीजें चलेंगी. जी असवद.
जी सर, मेरा सवाल ये था कि सर स्टैटिक और डायनामिक जो एनवायरनमेंट है, सर जो चेंजेस एक्चुएटर कर रहे हैं तो वो स्टैटिक में आते हैं अगर मतलब एनवायरनमेंट हमारी है और एक्चुएटर ने कोई चेंज किया तो वो स्टैटिक ही रहेगी कि डायनामिक बोलेंगे इसको हम.
एक्चुएटर ने अगर कोई चेंज कर दी है उसके अंदर एंड दैट देन it would basically be a dynamic environment, right? So dynamic environment के अंडर ही फॉल करेगा, but then there are levels of dynamism that is available in that particular environment, ठीक है. तो अगर से फॉर एग्जांपल आपके पास जो चेंज आ रही है इन द एनवायरनमेंट that is limited, so you can actually say that okay, it's dynamic, it's not completely static. Lekin the level of dynamism that is available in the environment that could change, ठीक है. और वो कैसे change करता है I'll just show you in the next slide. बल्कि इसी स्लाइड के ऊपर आपको पता चलेगा कि इसके अंदर जो फर्क है वो क्या है कि इफ इट इज कम्प्लीटली स्टैटिक तो हायर लेवल के ऊपर फर्क कहाँ पे आएगा, ठीक है. तो एपिसोडिक और सीक्वेंशियल के ऊपर भी अभी बात करते हैं. एंड देन यू हैव द अदर वन व्हिच इज डिस्क्रीट और कॉन्टिन्यूस. डिस्क्रीट और कॉन्टिन्यूस की तो बात मैं शायद पहले भी कर चुका हूँ, so I'll just repeat that. Discrete and continuous would mean what is the frequency with which you are getting your precepts or your sensory inputs. Okay, so at times it's almost continuous, so it's very close to continuous. For example, अगर आपके पास कैमरा फीड है तो कैमरा फीड जो है आपके पास वो continuous कैटेगरी में फॉल करेगी, although के उसमें discretely ही वो सेंस कर रहा है. लेकिन इफ जैसे लास्ट टाइम मैंने बताया था कि इफ यू आर सेंसिंग द एनवायरनमेंट से वेरी फ्रीक्वेंटली, सो विद स्मॉल इंटरवल्स इन बिटवीन, then you can actually approximate it to be a continuous. So in all real world applications, you actually approximate it to be continuous rather than considering it to be डिस्क्रीट, क्योंकि आपके पास एक प्रिसेप्ट से दूसरी, एक सेंसरी असेसमेंट से दूसरी सेंसरी असेसमेंट के दरमियान जो टाइम इंटरवल है दैट इज वेरी वेरी स्मॉल, ठीक है. सो दैट्स व्हाई यू कैन एक्चुअली कैटेगराइज इट एज continuous. So camera feed are considered to be continuous, whereas the temperature readings, if the temperature readings are being sent after every 10 minutes, yeah, after every half an hour, so that would fall in the category of discrete, ठीक है. अच्छा, मास का क्वेश्चन है कि does the agent have inherent randomness or the environment? I couldn't actually understand this question.
सर ये स्टोकेस्टिक एनवायरनमेंट के लिए मैं पूछ रहा था.
अच्छा,
लाइक हम जी
स्टोकास्टिक इन्वायरमेंट में रैंडमनेस जो है वो उस तरह से इन्वॉल्व अगर होती है तो देन दैट मींस दैट यू आर कॉम्प्रोमाइजिंग ऑन रैशनैलिटी, ठीक है। तो डिसीजन मेकिंग तो स्टोकास्टिक इन्वायरमेंट के अंदर भी होगी, लेकिन दैट वुड बी प्रोबेबिलिस्टिक इन नेचर, ठीक है। सो प्रोबेबिलिस्टिक रीजनिंग अप्रोचेज आपको यूज करनी पड़ेगी rather than कि आप जो है वो कोई सेट रूल्स आप यूज कर सकें, ठीक है। सो रैंडमनेस आप उसमें फिर भी इनकॉर्पोरेट उस तरीके से नहीं करेंगे या नहीं होने देंगे। आप अपने मॉडल को जितना कोशिश हो सकता है, रीजनिंग मॉडल को आप जितना कोशिश हो सके उसको से डिटर्मिनिस्टिक के करीब लेके जाना चाहेंगे। And one way is to apply probabilistic reasoning process there. Stochastic processes के complete area जिसके through आप you can identify or you can apply probability theories to actually get some reasonable decisions, ठीक है। naive Bayes approach है and or random processes को आप use कर सकते हैं। there are numerous other ways जिसके through आप inferencing process को कर सकते हैं, लेकिन आप टोटल रैंडमनेस पे उसे नहीं छोड़ सकते। हाँ, एक उसमें तरीका है कि जिसमें यू कैन you'll have to start with random and then ultimately the behavior becomes more say what you can say rational, और वो है when you are developing or when learning ability is incorporated into the agent और आपके पास कोई prior history ना हो और history available ना हो of events, so exploration की form में then you can have that's this sort of a behavior which starts with a random process and or random outcomes, और फिर वो उन आउटकम्स को असेस करते हैं और सम सॉर्ट ऑफ रीइंफोर्समेंट इज डन ताकि आप जो रैंडम एक्शंस जो एजेंट ने परफॉर्म किए हैं उसमें से अंडर अ गिवन सिनेरियो व्हाट what is the best sort of action that actually took you or that was close that took you closer to your goal, ठीक है। तो वहां से आप फिर वो जो रैंडम बिहेवियर आपने एग्जिबिट किए हैं वहां से यू कैन एक्चुअली एक्सट्रैक्ट सम यूजफुल इंफॉर्मेशन एंड देन लर्न फ्रॉम देयर। सो इट्स नॉट completely random, especially when it is not the agent is not in an exploration mode, ठीक है। Okay, so let's just so all these things combined together gives you two levels of let's say high level sort of goals. So one is the level of autonomy. So everything that we have discussed so far depends upon the level of autonomy that you are given, that you are giving the agent, okay? So agar if it is fully autonomous, then everything here that we have that we have explained would come into action. For example, level of autonomy, if that is higher, so the agent is free to take whatever decision that agent wants to take, okay? There are no restrictions, okay? In case of let's say games, you will find that the level of autonomy is restricted by applying what you say that some limits or some rules of the game itself. So वहाँ पे वो कुछ action कर सकता है, कुछ actions आप उसे disallow करेंगे, या कुछ moves आप disallow करेंगे because they are outside the scope. So your autonomy is in that case is limited. Whereas दूसरे cases के अंदर if it is a navigation sort of expedition, तो उस case के अंदर level of autonomy could be really high. So this is something that is quite important and one has to be very careful about that कि आपने लेवल ऑफ ऑटोनॉमी को डिफाइन करना है कि और फिर आपने ये सारी चीज़ें डिफाइन करनी है कि क्या ये गोल बेस्ड होना चाहिए, यूटिलिटी बेस्ड होना चाहिए, स्टोकास्टिक है या नहीं है, या होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए. So everything is decided. Types of sensors that you are using depends upon that. And then the level of rationality is also important. That is, if there is an error in the outcome, then what level of error is acceptable to you? So you have to define both these things and then design the agent. Otherwise आपके लिए ये difficult हो जाएगा. तो level of rationality would mean that the amount of irrational actions that one agent can perform what is the tolerable limit on that, ठीक है? So you have to define that, or you always have to or you are always expecting, or you always want your agent to have rational sort of actions. So अगर आप दोनों को highest level पे लेके जाएंगे, तो in that case what would happen is that the cost of developing such a system would be very very high, ठीक है? और critical missions के लिए obviously आप level of rationality जो है वो उसको उस पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं कर सकते. एट टाइम्स यू विल फाइंड आउट कि बोथ ऑफ देम आर आल्सो कॉन्फ्लिक्टिंग. सो अगर लेवल ऑफ ऑटोनॉमी जैसे ऊपर जाएगी तो आपकी हो सकता है कि इररेशनल डिपिक्शन ऑफ से एक्शंस दैट माइट आल्सो गो अप, ठीक है? सो एट टाइम्स यू हैव टू कॉम्प्रोमाइज बिटवीन द टू, ठीक है? कि किस तरीके से आप उसको कॉम्प्रोमाइज करते हैं. Okay, so here's a video, a small video of Rhino, and I'll just show you that how this agent is actually performing, and then you can also analyze कि what type of environment is it, or all जो कि वो हमने different जो factors study किए हैं, we just try to find out how they are video.
सर आपकी आवाज कम आ रही है, इसकी आवाज ज्यादा आ रही है.
Okay, so this slide is actually giving you the map and the localization that was that resulted into that could result because of the movement of this agent on the floor of the museum. So localization would mean that you try to identify कि इस वक्त जो agent है वो किस location पे है on this map, and map generation is primarily regeneration of the map of the museum floor. So the overall goal here is to actually take the visitors and give them a complete visit of the museum. So this environment would be well episodic in nature in a way or it could be, I mean, firstly I'll tell you कि episodic और sequential में क्या फर्क है, and then we can actually see कि ये क्या environment episodic है या नहीं. So episodic in this particular case would mean कि from one exhibit to the second exhibit आपने जो move करना है, that is just considered to be one episode. And if there are 10, let's say if there are 50 exhibits present in the museum, then the purpose of this robot is to take you closer to all of those 50 exhibits. तो और इस तरीके से कि you have to keep in, the agent has to keep in mind कि ये एक exhibit जो आपने already visit कर लिया हुआ है वहाँ पे आप दोबारा ना जाएं, ठीक है. So this is a complete sort of say a sequential sort of say problem that you have to solve. So from one exhibit to another exhibit, and then to another exhibit, and then you complete all those 50 exhibits. The number 50 is just an example. So you go around all those exhibits, and then you finish your trip. If it were episodic, then it could be, say, from exhibit to exhibit. So at higher level, it's basically sequential in nature, but at a lower level, you have, the agent has to move from one say exhibit to another exhibit, right? So therefore at a lower level it becomes episodic in nature. So episodic environment का मतलब हमारे पास ये है कि you have say a sort of sub goal defined, and you achieve that sub goal, and that's it, and you don't really go beyond that. And so it's just like an episode. So an episode takes place, and that's it. An example in case of a navigation robot would be that you move in a city, and you just find one route at a time. You don't really take a tour of the whole city at all. So if it is a tour of the whole city, then primarily it would essentially be a sequential. But if you take, let's say, one station to another station in time within a city, then it becomes episodic. So it depends कि आप कितनी granularity पे देख रहे हैं. Even a sequential sort of say task could be divided into episodes. Okay, so it depends कि आप किस तरीके से अपना जो है वो environment को analyze कर रहे हैं. So at some level of let's say generalization, you will find it to be sequential, and at another level of generalization you will find it to be episodic in nature. ठीक है. So episodic का मतलब ये होगा कि it's actually basically achievement of sub goals, and then those episodes combine together to complete the whole picture. ठीक है. Can this be solved? जी बिल्कुल. This can be solved basically. If I start from early, so basically many episodes make, yes, you are right. See, this is exactly what can happen. And can we revisit an exhibit in an episode? Okay, if you are revisiting an exhibit, that would mean that you are actually in a way, at times it would seem you are actually wasting your time, because that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is to complete the tour. Okay, so if you are repeating something, then that would mean that you have actually cycles in your traversal, and that would obviously waste time, and that would prevent you from completing your complete sequence. That is to go from one exhibit to another exhibit and then complete all the exhibits. ठीक है. Mahan का है कि can this be solved? Yes, this can be solved by usual graph traversals. Primarily, it actually boils down to a search problem, and you can actually convert all navigation type problems into search problems. And when it comes to search problems, that means that you can use graphs or trees to actually solve the problem itself. So yes, you are right, man. We can actually do that. Ji Fatma.
Sequential में basically ये होता है कि आपका current decision can affect your future decisions, and episodic में ये होता है कि वो one sub goal at a time करता है.
Yeah.
So when ये जो machine Rhino है, when it's going through every exhibit, तो इसके अंदर what if it takes a turn? जैसे episodic है अगर, तो what if it takes a turn and उसके आगे, उस exhibit के आगे there's a dead end. तो episodic की अगर episodic behavior हो, तो will it just start repeating all the exhibits? Because अगर वो dead end पे आ जाता है और हमने sequential नहीं किया हुआ, तो उस केस में वो repeat नहीं होना शुरू हो जाएंगे अगर episodic.
जी बिल्कुल, उस केस में वो repeat होना शुरू हो जाएंगे, and that is exactly what you want to prevent in such a scenario.
So in this case sequential बेहतर होगा.
जी बिल्कुल, सीक्वेंशियल हायर लेवल के ऊपर आपको सीक्वेंशियली करना पड़ेगा, लोअर लेवल के अंदर आपको एपिसोडिक करना पड़ेगा. लेकिन if that repetition starts taking place, then that means that the rationality has been compromised. I mean, वो rational behavior तो नहीं होगा ना कि एक exhibit से वो बार बार उसी exhibit के दरमियान move कर रहा होगा. So that means that your reasoning algorithm that you have actually incorporated into your system, that is not properly working, because you have to revisit that also. And of course अगर उसको कोई और solution नहीं मिलेगा तो वो फिर वो repeat ही करना शुरू कर देगा between two ends. ठीक है. So that is
Okay,
something
thank
that has to be prevented. Okay, so let's just move on to another. So these are some of the stats of this Rhino robot that I've just shown you. Okay, so this is the explanation of what we have discussed so far. Inaccessible or accessible मैंने आपको बता दिया. I hope this is clear. Dynamic and non-dynamic की बात भी हमने कर ली. Discrete continuous की भी बात कर ली. Deterministic and stochastic भी मैंने आपको बताया कि what is that. Episodic and sequential भी मैंने आपको बताया. So at the top level we'll say that it's not a non-episodic, but at the lower level it would be episodic in nature. So what type of so here before we move on, let's just try to see कि agent को अगर आप program करना चाहेंगे तो what would be the program that or what would be the agent world look like. So you have the environment, and within that environment you have an agent, and within the agent you have the brain of the agent. The brain of the agent is actually where this reasoning bit resides. कि आपने sense किया, act किया, और आपके पास जो है, this is what you call as sense act store or sense act cycle. So you have sensing ability, then you have the acting ability, the agent, and then you can actually have a different sort of combinations here, that what type of sensing is there, how those sensing senses, whatever you sense is converted into actions. So it's a sort of an agent brain. So यहाँ पे आपके पास environment से आप input ले रहे हैं और environment को ही आप output दे रहे हैं. So that means that you are changing the environment here continuously. Right. So let's just see. So this is a reflex agent. तो अगर मैं reflex agent बनाता हूँ तो आपके पास जो reasoning ability as such उसमें incorporate आप उस तरीके से नहीं कर सकते. तो it's just like a lookup table. तो आपने कुछ चीज़ perceive की और फिर फौरन आपने एक action कर लिया. So this is what would be in case of let's say a reflex action or reflex agent. तो इसको हम reflex agent कहेंगे. Let's move on to the next type. Which is the model based agent. यहाँ पे what is happening is that you perceive certain things and then you have a model inside and you try to assess your present state, and you assess your present state, and based upon your present state you and the way you assess your present state, it might be through some type of a model that is present in there. So you use a model to assess your present state, and then based upon that you actually select an action, and then that has to be performed. अच्छा, पिछले केस के अंदर रिफ्लेक्स के अंदर you don't really assess the present state. So if it is a critical situation, तो अगर आपने कोई चीज perceive की है, तो if that is critical, some critical change has taken place in the environment, so you simply take an action. ठीक है, and that action could be preventive action, or that could be some sort of action that could take you to safety. ठीक है, तो उसमें ज़्यादा assessment of the state इतना ज़्यादा involved नहीं होता. You don't really try to assess कि कौन सा action ज़्यादा बेहतर होगा और कौन सा action कम बेहतर होगा और आपकी present state क्या है क्या नहीं है. So if some disaster, let's say, happens, so in that case you don't really waste time on assessing the state कि क्या है. So you already know कि some disaster has taken place, so therefore you simply take an action. So उस केस में एक एक्शन, पॉसिबल एक्शन ये हो सकता है, you take your robot or the robot takes itself to some sort of safety. मॉडल यूटिलिटी बेस्ड एजेंट के अंदर फर्क जो है, जो पिछला मॉडल बेस्ड एजेंट है और मॉडल यूटिलिटी बेस्ड एजेंट के अंदर जो फर्क है वो ये है कि it's exactly the same. The only difference is that before you perform an action, suppose you have a set of actions that could be performed, so you assess all those possible actions and the effect of those actions on the environment, and then in turn the effect on the agent itself. and as a result you select the one that gives you the best possible outcome. So आपने जो भी goal set किया, you try to see that which action is the best in terms of taking you towards the goal. ठीक है, तो आप multiple actions में से आप select करते हैं, you evaluate it through some function, and that function is primarily what you call as the utility function. तो utility function आप incorporate अगर आप कर देते हैं, the primary purpose of utility function is that it evaluates various actions before an action is actually taken place. So or applied back to the environment, the action. तो उससे पहले आप action evaluation पे जाते हैं. Then you have model utility goal based agent. So ये मैंने पहले बात जैसे की कि you perceive certain things, assess your state, suggest a set of actions, apply the utility function and find out what is the best action. और यहाँ पे best action जब हम बात करते हैं, that could be, let's say, a goal oriented performance analysis, or it could be a non goal oriented performance analysis. Goal oriented में आपने simply ये देखना है कि what action takes you closer to your goal, and then you apply that action. और अगर आप non goal based करना चाहते हैं तो उसमें let's say आप time भी देख सकते हैं कि आप ये देखते हैं कि अच्छा इस action को perform करने में time कितना लगेगा. You go for an action that takes less time. ठीक है, या you go for an action that is more efficient in terms of energy. So if it is a robot और उसकी बैटरी कंज्यूम हो रही है, दो एक एक्शन आपको गोल की तरफ लेके जा रहा है, लेकिन उसमें आपकी जो बैटरी पावर जो आप लूज करेंगे that would be much higher. So therefore you compromise on the goal itself and you focus on the overall energy requirements. तो अगर आपकी बैटरी ऑलरेडी लो है और रोबोट मूव और या एजेंट मूव करेगा उस डायरेक्शन के अंदर या गोल की तरफ, तो माइट एंड अप इन अ डेड स्टेट. तो दूसरी तरफ ये है कि आपने पहले बैटरी रिचार्ज करनी है और फिर गोल को आप गोल की तरफ जाना है. तो फर्स्ट द रोबोट वुड गो टुवर्ड्स द रिचार्जिंग स्टेशन, वहां पे अपने आप को रिचार्ज करेगा और फिर गोल की तरफ मूव करेगा. सो एट टाइम्स यू माइट हैव टू डिविएट फ्रॉम योर गोल इन ऑर्डर टू अचीव योर गोल. ठीक है, तो इस तरह की जो एवेल्युएशन है वो यूटिलिटी फंक्शन आपका कर सकता है. But if it is only focused on goal, तो फिर वो goal based agent होगा. If it is also incorporating the utility functions in it, here it would be utility goal based agent. And if it is also assessing the present state through some sort of models or some sort of say some sort of say algorithm that is available there, then it becomes a model utility goal based agent. So you can combine everything together. अच्छा, इसमें एक चीज और आप ऐड कर सकते हैं, और वो क्या है? Anyone? एक चीज इसमें और भी की जा सकती है in order to ensure कि आप हमेशा rational decisions ही लें. जी, the ability of learning. बिल्कुल ठीक है. Sarah, you are absolutely right. So you can also incorporate the ability of learning here. That means कि आपने जो भी model, utility, goal combinations आपने try out किए हैं या set of actions आपने try out किए हैं, you also learn those. So you can also incorporate a learning algorithm in it, ताकि आपने जो भी एक्शंस परफॉर्म किए हैं और करेक्ट एक्शंस आपने जो परफॉर्म किए हैं उनको आप लर्न कर लें, और जो इनकरेक्ट एक्शंस आपने परफॉर्म किए हैं ड्यूरिंग दिस एक्टिविटी उसको आप जो है उसको भी लर्न कर लें कि जी ऐसा नहीं करना. ठीक है, सो यू कैन इनकॉर्पोरेट लर्निंग हियर, राइट. So it could become model utility goal learning based agent. ठीक है, so everything is actually, so this is probably the highest level of the agent or the most complex form of the agent brain that you can actually have. और इसमें से आप reflex को हमने इसमें से जानबूझ के अलग कर दिया क्योंकि reflex doesn't fit here. It would become as a second sort of set here. You can't so everything won't go in together. या आप reflex based करेंगे या आप model utility goal learning based काम करेंगे. ठीक है, so that's just as an option. So under certain conditions you will not apply anything of this sort. You will simply go and go for or in a mode of reflex agents. ठीक है, कैसे आपने करना है. Okay. Right. So this is the next few slides primarily gives you sort of details on what we have discussed so far. So primarily skeleton agent in terms of pseudocode is represented here. So the input is actually the precepts and the return is obviously the action. और in between क्या हो रहा है, आपने मेमोरी के अंदर आपने precepts को कुछ स्टोर किया हुआ है और फिर आपने एक एल्गोरिदम या एक फंक्शन डिफाइन करना है जो कि एक्शन को चूज करेगा एंड देन यू अपडेट योर मेमोरी. दैट मीन्स कि उस एक्शन को परफॉर्म करने के बाद जो चेंजेस आई हैं उन चेंजेस को आपने अपडेट करना है इनटू योर मेमोरी. So therefore the memory actually keeps on changing. So this is sort of a pseudo code for the skeleton agent. और इसके अंदर आप changes करते रहेंगे as you incorporate more and more agents here or the type of agent that you incorporate here. For example, simple reflex action agent जो होगा उसके अंदर if you look at the right box, so this is what would happen in a simple reflex agent. ठीक है, तो reflex agent के अंदर क्या है, you have the say precept, you interpret your inputs and then you match that what is the state you are in. Simple matching होगी, उसके ऊपर कोई deliberation as such नहीं है. It's, as I told you, it's a sort of a lookup table और वहाँ से आप सिर्फ ये देखेंगे कि आपने कौन सा एक्शन परफॉर्म करना है under that situation and without even evaluating कि वो एक्शन आपको कहाँ पे लेके जाएगा. So utility वाला फैक्टर, गोल वाला फैक्टर और मॉडल वाला फैक्टर इसके अंदर इनकॉर्पोरेट नहीं हो सकता. हाँ, स्टेट डिटर्मिनेशन वाला फैक्टर इसके अंदर होगा, बट दैट इज नॉट एन असेसमेंट ऑफ योर प्रेजेंट स्टेट. दैट मीन्स दैट यू विल नॉट ट्राई टू असेस कि क्या जो स्टेट आपने परसीव किया क्या आप वाकई उस स्टेट में हैं या नहीं. ठीक है, दैट वुड बी द पार्ट ऑफ द मॉडल बेस्ड एजेंट जिसमें यू विल ट्राई टू असेस के whatever you perceive is correct or not. यहाँ पे if you have a stress call or something of that call of that sort, so you immediately perform an action. ठीक है, as soon as you identify that you are in that particular precept state. ठीक है जी. सो प्राइमरीली कंडीशन एक्शन रूल्स के फॉर्म में आप ये इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कर सकते हैं. सो आप सर्च के फॉर्म में ये इम्प्लीमेंटेशन कर सकते हैं या कुछ और मेथड्स आप यूज कर सकते हैं इन एजेंट्स को परफॉर्म करने के लिए. अच्छा, देन यू हैव द मॉडल बेस्ड एजेंट. और मॉडल बेस्ड एजेंट के भी अगर आप सूडो कोड, इफ यू लुक एट द सूडो कोड, you are also like trying to assess your state, and that means that you are actually incorporating some sort of a model here to find out the real state you are in. Okay, so state updation bhi iske andar would be part of it. Here again rule, I'm just writing down rule match, but this is primarily the thing jahan pe aap apna koi aur model bhi incorporate kar sakte hain. ठीक है, रूल मैच के अलावा. रूल मैच is a sort of conditional rules that you can incorporate in your system. That is like one way of doing it, but there could be other ways of doing this matching here. ठीक है, रूल मैचिंग का मतलब ये है कि यू आर सिंपली लुकिंग एट कि आपकी प्रेजेंट स्टेट के अगेंस्ट कौन सा एक्शन परफॉर्म करना है. दिस इज व्हाट रूल मैच हियर मींस. Okay, and then you return the action. Goal based agent इसी तरीके से जो है you can define the goal based agent. Utility based agent I have already explained that कि इसमें आप performance को देखते हैं और कुछ conflicting goals को भी resolve करने की कोशिश करते हैं. जैसे आपने चार्जिंग स्टेशन की तरफ जाना है या गोल की तरफ जाना है. So that decision would depend upon the level of power you are left with. The agent is left with. तो अगर पावर लो है तो चार्जिंग एजेंट के पास वो जाएगा, और जब वो चार्जिंग एजेंट के पास जाएगा तो दिस विल टेक यू अवे फ्रॉम योर गोल. तो आप गोल पे कॉम्प्रोमाइज कर रहे हैं लेकिन यू आर एक्चुअली also looking at other aspects. तो इस वजह से you have to incorporate this. So this is everything summarized that we have discussed so far. So this completes our discussion on the agents, and the next we have two further examples. I'll just show you two further examples of the agents G, I'll just finish this. G, Ajwa, you have a quiz, I know. I'll just show you very quickly. एक room cleaning agent है. Okay, so this is, all these things have been discussed. This is just a sort of repetition that we have here. Very quickly, I'll just show you an example of a vacuum cleaner iRobot, which is also an agent, और उसका यहाँ पे complete explanation of that is
keeping your home beautifully clean every day is hard, but and hair build up everywhere. So for cleaner floors throughout your entire home, at the push of a button, meet the iRobot Roomba 900 series vacuum cleaning robot. The power to change the way you clean. The Roomba 900 series is your cleaning partner, designed to help you stay ahead of everyday mess. Thanks to its advanced iAdapt 2.0 navigation with visual localization, the Roomba 900 series seamlessly navigates an entire level of your home, moving effortlessly from room to room and from surface to surface, working.
Okay, so this is an iRobot, a vacuum cleaner robot, and you can analyze this vacuum cleaner robot based upon the discussion that we have. So what are the different types of inputs, what are the outputs, what type of environment it actually operates in, and what would be the reasoning method that this agent is actually taking place. So we can discuss this later also, that how this is actually performing. So before I leave, I'll just show you, we'll come with this discussion later on. I'll just show you another type of robot agent very quickly. This is called the LipNet. I don't know whether you have heard about LipNet or not. LipNet is a type of agent which identifies, which is actually doing lip reading. So you speak something and it's muted. So you just try to identify कि ये बंदा जो है ये क्या बोल रहा है. ठीक है? So I'll just very quickly show you this and then we'll finish for today.
Place Blue and M1 soon.
Low red in X-ray zone.
Right. So, the basic idea is depicted here. So this is another agent. What is this agent doing? This agent is actually doing lip reading. So if someone is talking, this agent would basically try to identify कि ये क्या बात क्या कर रहे हैं by just looking at or evaluating the movement of the lips. So vacuum cleaner and LipNet, both of these two different types of agents, you can again try to assess LipNet based on some of the discussion that we had today. कि इसकी environment किस तरह की होगी, इसमें inputs किस तरह की हैं, किस तरह का agent है, reflex agent है या model based है या utility and goal based agent है, और इसमें किस तरह के sensors use किए गए हैं. So all those analysis could be done on these agents again. Right, G. So I think this is enough for today, and now you also have a quiz. So I'll end the session now so that you can take your quiz. Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I had a question.
Gigi, please go ahead.
Sir, can you please explain कि model-based agent और goal-based agent में क्या फर्क है mainly?
अच्छा, मेनली जो फर्क है गोल बेस्ड एजेंट के अंदर, यू ऑलवेज टेक एन एक्शन दैट वुड टेक यू टुवर्ड्स योर गोल. ठीक है, तो अगर आप एक ऐसी सिचुएशन में है वेयर यू हैव लेट्स से टू पॉसिबल एक्शंस, वन टेक्स यू टुवर्ड्स योर गोल एंड दैट वन टेक्स यू अवे फ्रॉम योर गोल, तो गोल बेस्ड एजेंट वुड ऑलवेज टेक एन एक्शन दैट वुड टेक यू टुवर्ड्स योर गोल. ठीक है, लेकिन कुछ सिचुएशन जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि अच्छा आप ये कह सकते हैं कि जी एजेंट तो हमेशा गोल सीकर होगा तो वो गोल की तरफ ही जाएगा, लेकिन जैसे मैंने वो बैटरी वाली एग्जांपल दी कि आपके पास दो एक्शन है, एक में आपके पास एक्शन ये है कि आप चार्जर के पास जाएं और दूसरा ये है कि आप गोल के पास जाएं, तो उस सूरत में आपका जो डिसीजन होगा ना वो सिंपल गोल को सामने रख के नहीं होगा, वो आपने ये देखना कि इस वक्त आपकी बैटरी पावर कितनी है लेट से। तो अगर बैटरी पावर बहुत लो है तो आप चार्जर के पास मूव करेंगे पहले रादर देन मूविंग टू द गोल। तो ये
सर वो तो यूटिलिटी बेस्ड एजेंट नहीं हो
हाँ
जाएगा?
ठीक है, मैं सिर्फ ये बता रहा हूँ कि हर वक्त गोल बेस्ड नहीं हो सकता। अच्छा, अब मॉडल बेस्ड में ये होगा कि बिफोर एन एक्शन इज डिटरमिन्ड कि आपने एक्शन कौन सा करना है, यू हैव सम सॉर्ट ऑफ अ मॉडल दैट असेस द प्रेजेंट स्टेट। एक तो ये है कि आपने जो परसीव किया आपने उसी के ऊपर यकीन कर लिया कि आपने कहा हाँ जो मैंने परसीव किया यही मेरी स्टेट है। और मॉडल बेस्ड के अंदर ये होगा कि यू ट्राई टू असरटेन के वेदर यू आर इन दैट स्टेट और नॉट, ठीक है, and that ascertainment is done through a separate model that is incorporated in your agent, ठीक है। सो ऑल द प्रिसेप्ट्स एक्चुअली एक तो एजेंट की अपनी असेसमेंट होगी और दूसरा एक असेसमेंट होगी थ्रू द मॉडल इटसेल्फ, ठीक है। लेट्स से कि आपने एक रूल सेट कर दिया कि इफ द वैल्यू ऑफ टेम्परेचर या इफ द वैल्यू ऑफ सर्टन सेंसर्स इज अबव अ सर्टन थ्रेशोल्ड तो आप इस स्टेट पे हैं, ठीक है। लेकिन इसके लिए आपने एक कॉम्प्लेक्स मैथमेटिकल मॉडल भी साथ डेवलप किया हुआ है, सो एवरी इनपुट गोज इनटू दैट मॉडल एंड दैट मॉडल आल्सो प्रेडिक्ट्स योर स्टेट। तो फिर आप डिटरमिन करते हैं कि जी अच्छा आपकी प्रेजेंट स्टेट क्या है, सो द असेसमेंट और डिटर्मिनेशन ऑफ द स्टेट इज थ्रू अ स्पेशल मॉडल एंड दैट्स एक्चुअली व्हाट द मॉडल बेस्ड वुड बी, ठीक है। और मॉडल बेस्ड के बाद ये गोल बेस्ड या यूटिलिटी बेस्ड होगा या यूटिलिटी गोल बेस्ड होगा। तो पहले मॉडल आएगा, वहां से आप स्टेट असेस करेंगे। तो मॉडल का मकसद सिंपल ये है कि आपने स्टेट असेसमेंट करनी है कि आप किस स्टेट के अंदर हैं, और वो आप सिंपल सेंसरी इनपुट की बेस पे नहीं करेंगे, बल्कि सेंसरी इनपुट वुड गो इनटू अ मॉडल एंड दैट मॉडल वुड प्रेडिक्ट कि आप इस स्टेट में हैं, और फिर उस प्रेडिक्शन जो कि स्टेट प्रेडिक्शन है उसकी बेस के ऊपर आप जो है अपने एक्शन को डिटरमिन करें। आई होप दिस इज क्लियर।
सो सर गोल बेस्ड और यूटिलिटी बेस्ड दोनों में मॉडल बेस्ड एजेंट होगा?
जी बिल्कुल हो सकता है, बिल्कुल हो सकता है। और रिफ्लेक्स में और इसमें फ़र्क सिंपल ये है कि इसमें मॉडल कोई नहीं होगा, रिफ्लेक्स के अंदर मॉडल कोई नहीं एग्जिस्ट करता। आपने जो असेस किया है आपने फौरी उसके ऊपर एक्शन ले लिया, आप उसको क्या उसे कहना चाहिए, उसे वैलिडेट करने की कोशिश में नहीं लगेंगे कि आप यू नॉट ट्राई टू असेस कि क्या वाकई जो स्टेट असेसमेंट हुई है बाय द एजेंट वो करेक्ट भी है या नहीं, ठीक है। तो उस केस में क्योंकि आपके पास टाइम थोड़ा होता है एंड यू हैव टू गिव an action immediately, therefore that assessment doesn't take place, इसलिए हम उसको रिफ्लेक्स एक्शन, ठीक है।
राइट सर, थैंक यू सर।
ये बिल्कुल ऐसी चीज है कि जैसे आपने एक कुछ चीजें परसीव की हैं, देन यू स्टार्टेड थिंकिंग कि क्या ये मैं जो देख रहा हूँ वो ठीक देख रहा हूँ या नहीं, या हो सकता है ये ऐसे हो सकता है ये ऐसे ना हो। तो अब ये जो डिसीजंस आप आई मीन ह्यूमंस या इंसान कर रहे होते हैं ना, दिस इज व्हाट यू कॉल मॉडल बेस्ड। और रिफ्लेक्स केस के अंदर अगर आपने किसी गर्म चीज पे हाथ रख दिया तो आप ये नहीं सोचते कि ये क्या है, क्या ये वाकई गर्म है या नहीं, आप फौरन हाथ पीछे, ठीक। तो उसमें आप वो थिंकिंग प्रोसेस उस तरह से इन्वॉल्व नहीं होता। तो अगर आप रियल वर्ल्ड में इसकी एग्जांपल देखें तो प्राइमरीली इस तरह से आप उसको डिफरेंशिएट कर सकते हैं, ठीक, राइट जी। ओके, सो नाउ आई थिंक यू कैन लीव एंड